Go ahead and share my screen and do my opening comments. And are you just seeing my slides?
Yep.
Great. So good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for tuning in tonight. I'm Kimber McAfee, Executive Director of Alpine Watershed Group. We were really hoping to be in person tonight so we could celebrate our volunteers and have some tasty treats. But with all the weather this January, we decided it was safer to make the call last week to just meet virtually. And we look forward to hosting a volunteer appreciation celebration this spring or summer. Here's our agenda for the evening. AWG's Watershed Coordinator, Rachel Kieffer, is handling IT right now, and then I will take over that after this opening. So if you have any issues, send Rachel a chat, or if you're calling in, which I don't think anyone is right now, you can email her with any technical difficulties. And then to start off, I have a couple of tips about Zoom interaction tonight. I know we're all experts at this, but first, if you haven't renamed your Zoom profile with your name, please do so. I think I was seeing names for everyone, but you have 3 dots in the upper right corner, and that's where you can rename. Also, during the presentations, if you could please use the chat feature to ask a question or make a comment. And then during the discussions, you can either use the chat feature or you can raise your hand. Raise hand is under reactions. And if you have your Zoom window shrunk, you might find reactions are under more. So we're going to start with a brief introduction on AWG, and then I'm going to ask each of you to really quickly state your name and affiliation. And I know that this might seem silly since you can all see each other's names in Zooms, or you think everyone knows you, but as a watershed community, I think it's so important that we all know who each other is and what our connections are, and that's what helps us accomplish so much. And also tonight, we have some new community leaders, and I think it'd be very helpful for them all to meet each of you and vice versa. After that, Alanna Misico with the Lahontan Regional Water Quality Control Board will present on the post-fire sampling that the regional board has been doing since the Tamarack fire. And then Rachel will give an update on AWG's water quality monitoring program, as well as our 2022 volunteer accomplishments. So if there's anyone here not familiar with Alpine Watershed Group, we work to protect, conserve, and restore the watersheds of Alpine County by promoting sustainable, community and science-based collaborative solutions. And we're a little unique as a watershed group because instead of stewarding one complete watershed, we align with county boundaries. So we steward the headwaters of 5 watersheds: the Carson, the Upper Truckee, and on the West Slope, the South Fork American, the McCullumney, and the Stanislaus. But like a lot of other watershed groups, our program areas are monitoring, restoration, and community outreach and education. Tonight, you're going to hear a lot about all our volunteers accomplished in the last year. So I wanted to start by thanking those that have supported our small nonprofit organization to make all this possible. We try really hard to show our gratitude and to give recognition, but we can never do it enough. And it often takes me longer than I'd like to get to it because our staff is just Rachel and me. But please know we absolutely depend on your financial gifts to bridge our funding gaps. So thank you to all of you so much who are AWG donors. Know that grants do not cover all the time it takes us to write those grants. Grants won't cover writing the grant application, and they do not cover our day in and day out costs. So your donations truly keep us going. We also had a lot of organization and business contributions for Creek Day. So if you've been reading our newsletters, hopefully you read about the generosity of those organizations and businesses. I didn't list them there. What I did try to list here were all of the grantors that have been supporting us in 2022 and into 2023. And as you can see, because of our track record, this list is impressive, and it includes small and large foundations, nonprofit partners, and local, state, and regional entities. And we are so, so grateful. As you saw, one of our sponsors is Alpine County Health and Human Services. And we're so grateful that they share the belief that our programs help community members become stewards of their environment and their personal health. And so Erica Forsley with the county had created these flyers that we had hoped to share with you in person tonight, but I'm bringing them up virtually, and please look in our next newsletter for links to these. So now for the quick introductions part of our evening. What I'm going to do is I'm going to call on people 3 at a time, and I'd like you just to say your name and your affiliation. And it's great if you can turn your camera on for this part. Your affiliation may be that you are a community member, a local organization member, it could be your employer, or it could be all 3. And I am going to start with AWG's board. And so in this order, unmute and introduce yourself and your affiliation. We have our newly elected chair, Carl Rushmeyer, and Bob Twiss, and then Rich Harvey. Go.
Good evening. I'm Carl Rushmeyer. And as Kimber pointed out, I'm the newly appointed chair for the Alpine Watershed Group.
I guess it's my turn. I'm Rich Harvey. I'm thankfully a member of the board and happy that Carl is now our chair. And I've been on the board as a chair for about 6 years. And that's about it.
I'm Bob Twiss, and been on the board for several years. We have a house in Markleyville where we're there most of the year, and glad to be a board member.
Thank you. And our next 3 are Roger Funston, Brenda Hunt, and Rich Booth.
I'm Roger Funston, and I'm on the board of California Alpine Club Foundation, and we've been providing grants to Alpine Watershed Group for the last 3 or 4 years, and we really are excited about their work and are happy to support them.
Hi, I'm Brenda Hunt. I'm the Watershed Program Manager with the Carson Water Sub-Conservancy District.
Hi, I'm Rich Booth. I'm retired Lahontan Water Board guy. And just to rub it in, I'm in Houston, Texas on a family visit, having enjoyed 80-degree weather today. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next 3, I'm sorry if I'm not pronouncing this correctly, Daryl Ballou, Danny McClure, and Carlos Rendo.
Hi, my name is Daryl Baleo. I'm the new Eastern Alpine Fire Chief. I took over in 2nd of this month, and it's been a great experience so far. And I know I'm getting pulled in all directions, and that's great. But if you want to reach out to me, definitely reach out to me. And I'm glad to be invited to this meeting. So thank you.
Hi, I'm Danny McClure with the Lahontan Water Board.
Hi, I'm Carlos Rendo, Board of Directors of Envirolution, and I love doing volunteer water quality monitoring at AWG.
Thank you. Next, we have Alanna Misico, I pronounced that wrong, Charlie Dobson, and Jeff O'Connell.
Hi, my name's Alanna Misico. I work for the Lahontan Water Quality Control Board in the Surface Water Ambient Monitoring Program.
Good evening. I'm Charlie Dobson. I'm the newly elected district supervisor, a Markleyville resident, and glad to be here and learn about this. I don't know why my picture's not showing up.
I am Jeff O'Connell. I'm the forest hydrologist on the Humboldt-Toyabe National Forest.
Excellent. And now I'm going to have Mark, Pat, and January as one unit, and then we'll go to the next 3.
I like the one unit. Good evening, everyone. I'm Mark Schwartz, Markleyville resident, new chief. Just so you know, I live right across from the firehouse. So if you need anything, reach out to me. Station 92, that is, on Hot Springs. But I am I'm on the board of the Markleyville Water Company, which obviously relates well to the watershed, and we've worked well together. And you all have done wonderful things for our water here in Markleyville. And I'm also the board president of the Alpine County Chamber of Commerce. I wear a few other hats too, like most of us in this virtual room do. My wife is working, so she won't get introed, but if I can point the camera here over to Mom, there's Mom. There you go.
I'm January Riddle. I am a Markleyville resident, community member.
Thank you.
There you go, Kimra.
Next, we have Bruce Miller, Keith Berry, and Kelsey Marshall.
Hi, I'm Bruce Miller. I'm Alpine County resident, live in the Woodfords, and a volunteer and a river monitor.
Hi there, my name is Keith Berry. My wife Marcia is running a bit late, unable to join us, and this is our new baby boy, Reese, quite possibly the youngest member of the Alpine Watershed group community. We're all happy to be here.
And Kelsey Marshall.
Let's go ahead. Hey, hi, I'm Kelsey Marshall. I'm a fish biologist intern with the Humboldt-Toyabe National Forest.
Fantastic. Thanks for joining us. And then we have Ron Hames, Jennifer Kloshnik, and finally a phone caller from 775.
Hi, my name is Ron Hames, Alpine County Board of Supervisors, and I love water.
Oh, hi, my name is Jennifer Kwasnick. I'm just an interested community member. I live in Christmas Valley, but I spend an enormous amount of time down in Hope Valley and Markleyville and those areas. So just wanted to join in and learn a little more.
And then I'm not sure whether our caller at 775-781-1164 can unmute to introduce themselves. Okay, if not, I think I covered everyone. Rachel, did I miss anything, or is it time to turn it over to Elena?
I will admit, I don't think you missed anything, but I also don't see everyone's name in order. So if we did miss you, just speak out, and otherwise we'll keep moving.
Okay, so I am so thankful that Alanna Misico was willing to join us this evening and present on what you have been up to since the Tamarack fire. So it's all yours, Alanna, to share your screen and take it from here.
Can everyone hear me okay? Okay. Seems like I muted myself on accident. So once again, my name is Alanna Misico. I work for the Lahontan Regional Water Quality Board for the Surface Water Ambient Monitoring Program based out of South Lake Tahoe. Help, Rachel. It's not progressing. Oh, here we go. Sorry about that.
No, very good. Looks all good.
Okay, so I wanted to kind of let you guys know what we have been doing since the Tamarack fire. I also wanted to kind of just give you a little information about what we have done in the region before the Tamarack fire. So basically, the Surface Water Ambient Monitoring Program was established in the year 2000. So we, some of our original sites were actually established in the West Fork and East Fork watersheds. So therefore, we have about 2 decades of historical water quality data from that area. So that is very unique, because as you could see, the size of our region, we don't have that everywhere. So, you know, we get to as many places as we can, as frequently as we can, but budgeting is always an issue. So basically, you can see here our long-term trend monitoring sites within the watershed. We visit those on a quarterly basis, have been doing that since mid-2000s, especially the East Fork Carson site below the USGS gauge. and then the West Fort Carson below the Willow Creek. All of this historical data can be found in CEDEN. Get this to work. Okay. So I'm not going to go into depth about details of the Tamarack fire, but as we all know, it was naturally occurring fire, started on July 4th. You know, as winds progressed throughout that month, it obviously took off, burning within to the east and west fork watersheds. I immediately reached out to Mo Loden, was working with you at the Alpine Watershed Group at the time. We started coordinating pretty immediately after the fact. I also met with our State of Emergency Response Program, along with other regional board staff that have participated in some of these other mega fires throughout the state of California. So we started to come up with a plan. We had no funding source available, so that was a little hiccup in this. Because the fire burnt primarily through forested areas, not through an urban area, it was treated as a wildland wildfire. And that's kind of how we progressed with our monitoring design. So, you know, after discussions with Alpine Watershed Group, and like I said, folks with our other regions, we knew that we needed to start collecting samples as soon as possible. We knew that we wanted to collect on a regular basis, monthly if possible. We really wanted to capture those first storm events and spring runoff events, along with bioassessment data. So I know it's a big wish list considering we had no funding available. So I know there's a lot on this screen here, but I'll do my best. So it's our historical monitoring sites, as you can see on this map, they are the black dots. You can see, I'll try to point them out here. So we were sampling on a regular basis here, you know, at Pickett's Junction. We had a site right here at the Woodford's Bridge, one lower down on Diamond Valley Road, and then the East Fork on below the USGS gauge. So those were our permanent sites that we had been visiting on a regular basis. You could see our analyte list here. So in addition to that, we knew that we wanted to capture some more data, and we met with Mo. We got out there, did a site recon. You know, we didn't have the burn severity scar maps, weren't available to us at that time. This was August 2nd, I think, was our first meeting out there in the field. So based on staff availability and our limited resources that we had available to us, we established the 3 monitoring sites you'll see in this yellow triangle. Woodford's Bridge, which complements our long-term trend monitoring. We established a site here at Markleyville Creek right below the bridge, and then Hangman's Bridge as well. So moving forward, we were able to get some bioassessment monitoring done in the year 2022. So our contractors were able to visit 4 sites within the watershed. So we got to Markleyville Creek, Hot Springs Creek above the Hot Springs inflow, which was, that area was severely burned. We did the West Fort Carson USGS gauge, and then Monitor Creek, which is outside the burn zone, but a relevant site for our monitoring. We do, I was able to secure some funding to proceed in 2023. We have plans to sample the West Fort Carson above Forest Hill Creek. the West Fort Carson, and this is a lower site on the watershed, closer to Diamond Valley Road, as well as Indian Creek. I just wanted to share with you some data that we did have available to us. We have not been able to completely analyze all of our data, but what I was able to do was come up with some turbidity data to show you that generally, you know, we did have these first flushes producing some high turbidity levels. You can see here in the East Fort Carson, very turbid river. But as the summer of 2022 went by, you could see we did see some improvement in these numbers. So I kind of blew this up just so you could kind of get a better idea. This is a spring runoff flush that we had. So you could see the spike in all three sites, but they did prove to come back down as the summer went on. Here I have some historical TDS results at the Woodford site on the West Fort Carson. So our objective is 55 milligrams per liter is our baseline. And actually post-fire monitoring was actually below our objective. And as you could see throughout historical data, we've definitely had some higher numbers. So this is actually a good sign. We definitely were expecting to see some higher numbers than we saw there. So that was actually some good news. So moving forward, we will continue our long-term sampling at our stations that I showed you in the map, in the previous map. We'll be visiting those on a quarterly basis. We have once again secured some more bioassessment funds going into 2023. We would like to continue that, you know, as long as possible. So we'll keep striving to get some more funds to allow that monitoring to go forward. Currently, we have all of our 2021 data has been QA'd and is available to you, to the public in CEDEN, in our platform where we house all of our data. And our 2022 data is still in the works. So that's kind of our next step throughout these winter months, is to get the rest of that processed and uploaded for the public to view. We hope to collaborate with Alpine Watershed Group, creating, you know, making this data available to the public in a visual pleasing. Hopefully we could do a GIS storyboard or something that's easier for the public to digest. And I just wanted to thank you guys. Here on this slide, I do have a link to the West Fork Vision Project, which I'm sure some of you are familiar with. This is the California Environmental Data Exchange Network, CEDEN, and this is where you will find all of our data that has been QA'd. And then this here is a link to our SWAMP webpage, where you will find a lot of our historical monitoring reports and such. I think that's all I have.
Thank you so much, Alanna. We have one question from Brenda Hunt of Carson Water Sub-Conservancy District, and she's asking, does the data suggest why we didn't see higher numbers? Any projects that may have helped?
That's a great question. I'm going to go back to the slide because I don't think I did the best job explaining this. You know, potentially there I am not privy to all of the restoration projects that are in the works within the Alpine watershed. However, some of the numbers, turbidity and TDS, we were actually kind of surprised to see the lower numbers. And like I said, we're still in the works of doing a deeper data dive into this, and we hope to do so as more bioassessment data becomes available to us. That's really going to show us, you know, the recovery of the streams, and we're hoping we can secure 3 years of funding on that, and so that we could really sit down and look at that data. So I'm sorry, I can't answer that entirely.
There is a follow-up question, which maybe Danny McClure can answer, and that is, what is happening with the vision plan?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I am wrapping up a draft and getting it to my management this month, and we expect to release it this spring. And then for public comment, we'll also be floating it by all our kind of partner agencies and watershed groups. And then so it'll be going to the board for their kind of consideration and potential of approval of it in this summer at one of our board meetings. So that'll all be announced when we firm updates a little bit better.
Thanks, Danny. And we also we'll have it in our newsletter when that's available. So anyone who's getting our newsletter, stay tuned for that release of commentary or vision plan for commentary. And then Alanna, we did have one more question from Rich Harvey in the group chat. And he asked, did you do any monitoring of biological effects?
As far as bioassessment or can you define that?
Yeah, Rich, if you want to go ahead and unmute yourself and elaborate, feel free.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm interested in what effects did they have? Did the fire have on the biology of the little critters in the stream, the stream bottom, and fish survival? What effects did that? And also, when you talk about TDS, not everybody knows that stands for total dissolved solids.
No, I apologize. So I'm going back to this bioassessment monitoring screen. So we were able to get 4 sites sampled by our contractors. It was in late August and September. So that data is actually currently being analyzed. So I don't have that available to share any of that information with you. And like I said, we're striving to get more bioassessment done within the watershed. From speaking with, I've met with our other regions and how they have responded to these other mega fires throughout the state. And kind of what they're seeing of a trend is the first year runoff, which for us, right, would be the winter 21-22. As that kind of flushes out, that's how, the first ash and debris comes down. And then they're seeing that in the second year is when they're seeing a lot of the critters getting smothered, essentially. So the third year is when they're seeing the recovery. So like I said, we actually don't have funds secured for that third year of monitoring, but what we would like to do in an ideal situation is get back to this site list and resample. So that would be our ultimate goal, and that's what I'm pulling for. So then we could, see if that that trend is true. You know, if we do get some lower numbers, and then if we can see some recovery going into like 24. And that's the trends they're seeing throughout the state. So, you know, that's all the information I have right now.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Does anyone else have any questions or comments regarding Alana's presentation?
I do have one more quick thing I wanted to share. So on the link here that I have to the Vision Project, we do under the StoryMap have a tab set up for the Tamarack fire. You know, we don't have a ton of data housed in there, or like the bioassessment data to come, but that is where in time we would hope to house that. So you guys, in time, you could revisit that and hopefully see some updates as far as our monitoring goes.
And Alana, do you have that fact sheet that you shared?
Yeah.
Or do you want to bring that up?
Yeah, let me.
Or just talk about it too.
Yeah, and I do have. Am I no longer sharing?
You are no longer sharing.
Okay. All right. And here it is. Okay, so this is another thing that we have been working on in our office. I put this together over the last couple months, and that's will be shared with you folks as well. Kind of just, you know, brief background of the fire, what we did in response, and then this once again is that complicated map describing our monitoring efforts and monitoring frequency. One thing that I failed to let you folks know, as you recall, most of you may, if you're in the Alpine County, we received our first flush of the season early that year in October of 2021. So we did get out for that first flush event. We did, however, were unable to access the area in our second storm event came in December, as you recall, but there were so many road closures, we were not able to access the area. And that's a really bummer because we wanted to see that data. That was a heavy event, and it would have been a great event to capture. So we did the spring runoff event, was sampled in 2022. So we, like I said, we actually wanted 3 events, but we ended up with 2. So that's sometimes just the way it goes in this area when the roads wash out. And then basically in here, once again, kind of describing what we would like to do with our future monitoring efforts, and then some of the turbidity graphs. So we hope to update this fact sheet year 2 as the bioassessment data becomes available to us. So that is already on the table. So I think that's all I have. Anything else?
Thank you, Alana. I don't see any other hands raised, and I don't see any other questions in the chat. So.
All right, well, we'll be out there sampling. So if you guys see us.
Yeah, thank you, Alana.
All right.
Okay. So then I think that brings it over to our next section, which I will be doing the next presentations. So you can message Kimra if you have any questions, or you can chime in a little bit. We're going to go through our water quality, the AWG collects, which is different than the swamp that Alana was talking about in the post-fire. And then we'll get to our volunteer appreciation. And again, like Kimra said, we really hoped to be in person and able to celebrate and have some snacks. That did not happen, and maybe January in the future is probably not the best for that. But we will be hoping to do that in the summer or fall And we will have that in our newsletter and blasted so you guys can all attend.
And Rachel, Daryl has a question.
Yeah, go ahead, Daryl.
Yeah, so being new to this group, and Alana, I really appreciate the information you gave us about the water quality and whatnot. But as far as securing funding for your research, because that definitely affects, you know, my operations as a fire chief, making sure we have good, clean water. Are you guys going after grants, or am I kind of off here on how this kind of works? So please help me out.
So this is something I should have mentioned in the presentation, and I did not. The reason that we did come up with some funding was our regular swamp program that we do the regular monitoring. We had been put on hold during COVID. So we had essentially had a little bit of money in the bank, simply for that reason. And typically, as far as folks that I've met with statewide, these post-fire monitoring efforts, there is no funding at this point, and it is a scramble to come up with. And this is not just our region, but statewide. So, and that's the message I've got speaking with several different groups. So we put a little bit of funding into like an emergency fund. I had asked nicely, and that was with our regional budget that we do those long-term monitoring, but it's minimal. It's not like we can do a 2-year project or something like that. It's just constantly going to be a challenge, as far as I can tell. And hopefully we'll work with the Alpine Watershed group, but you know, our region is big too, and we have other major fires, you know, the Dixie and Caldor and stuff coming into our region. So it's something we're working really hard in-house with our team to be more proactive and not reactive, but the funding is still a missing source. And like I said, we're pulling wherever we can, but unfortunately, the state of California doesn't let you sit on a fund that has no direction very easily. So I'm sorry. I hope that answered your question.
Yes, like I said, I'm still learning all the minutiae of Alpine County, so I appreciate any information that you give me. So thank you so much.
And with the fires, you know, everyone's going to be different. Every approach is going to be different. Every monitoring plan, depending on, you know, if it went through a neighborhood, if it went through, you know, a hazardous area, or if it affected a drinking water site. So I know that, you know, I think in the state of emergency response like that, we would be able to come up with some money, but we're working in-house to have a plan where we can hit the ground running easier than this. This was the first post-fire monitoring program that I had put together. And I think we did a good job in a short amount of time with limited funding. Of course, we would have wanted to see more data, more frequency, but we did what we could, and I am pretty happy with the efforts that came through with it. So, but I will let you know. I could follow up if I hear anything different. I am meeting with the statewide effort. I think it's next week, and I'll see if anything has changed on that note.
Thanks, Elena. And there was a comment from Roger about a question regarding CAL FIRE funding. I'm not entirely sure if the water board can go after CAL FIRE funding, but that might be my misunderstanding there.
I kind of took the Tamarack fire under my wing, efforts there. Caldor, I wish we had someone else sitting on the line to answer those questions, but you know, a lot of funding came available easier with Caldor. You know, I think UC Davis was able to come forth with some, you know, lab analysis, and a lot of local agencies had boots on the ground immediately. So, and, you know, with Tamarack being before and kind of being a different beast in itself, I think we did a good job, but I think, it is appalling to see the different reactions in the different fires, and I don't know what to say on that. But
I said Cal Fire, not Caldor, but
oh.
that is interesting to really hear. Sorry. I mean, they're so close together and definitely different resources, just different regions too. Different resources.
Yeah. And I could follow up with some folks in-house and see if I could get a better answer for you.
Yeah, I know every year Cal Fire has different funding programs, and I think it's also, Kimmer and I are going through this too, kind of resources available, what we can achieve, what we can go after grant-wise, and what fits our specific area, our specific fire response. Right?
Yeah, and timing and stuff, it's like it's a difficult task. There's nothing that fits for everything. So
yeah. Well, thank you again, Alanna. And we will be in discussion. I think we're going to send out the fact sheet after this meeting as a follow-up. But if that doesn't happen, then we will also have it in our newsletter and kind of point it out, just so everyone has access to that.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you so much.
Thanks, Alanna. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and move on. We're actually right on time, so it's perfect. Let's see. And then present. Okay. I was telling Kimmer before this, it's been 2 years of Zoom and I still question every time I get on here. So please just let me know if you have any questions or if I'm missing something as we're going through. And I don't think I introduced myself, so I apologize. My name is Rachel Kieffer. I'm the Watershed Coordinator. Alpine Watershed. I've been here for now a little over a year. So to catch us up kind of all on our data that we have collected for 2020, 2021, and 2022, since we haven't really had a meeting in a few years. And part of my position is running this program, but the volunteers make it so easy. I reach out, we have volunteers that come back every year. Some have the adopted sites, and so that's where they go out every time. And it just is a really awesome program to see work. And so looking at the data, we're gonna look at it, and I apologize, I haven't been able to sit down and really spend hours and hours analyzing it. And so a lot of this is gonna be observations. Oops, sorry, went too fast there. Okay, so a little bit more on our program. We follow the Water Quality Control Board's objectives. And so those were released in 1995. And everything we compare against is that. Since 2004, this program has been around in some capacity. We've, for a couple of years, different, or almost since the inception of Alpine Watershed Group, we've had this program going in the Upper Carson River watershed. And then data collected is all put on, as Alanna was also talking about, the California Environmental Data Exchange Network. And so CEDEN makes it accessible for people to see kind of throughout the state what we're collecting and what water quality is looking like. And our data up through 2022 is now on CEDEN. Our volunteers, we measure at 5 different water quality sites. So a little similar to Alanna's as she talked about, we have 4 sites along the West Fork. We have Red Lake Creek, where it enters into the West Fork. We have Pickett's Junction, right by the accessibility bridge, our Paynesville site, and then Woodford's right across the bridge. And then on the East Fork, we have Silver Creek. So a little bit, it's about 3 miles past Monitor Junction. We have right behind the library, the Rover Hot Springs State Park, we sample within there. And then Hayman's Bridge is right here. We have a little bit of overlap with Alanna in our sites, but we do differ a tiny bit. The other thing is we don't do a full swamp sampling. So we do stream temperature, dissolved oxygen, pH, turbidity, and then our total dissolved solids, which is that TDS. We don't have in-house or are able to send out quite as much as Alanna is and their parameters, and so we're a little bit more limited in what we see. And like I said, our volunteers are the heart of this program. This is the longest running program that we've had, and it is all in part to our volunteers. And that connection that we have volunteers. Carlos is on today, comes in from Reno, so not living in the area. We have volunteers who have lived in the area for years and years. We have people in the Carson Valley who come up and volunteer. It's really amazing to kind of see how many people come together for our upper river to monitor and then also share that information with other people. And so we're going to do a super quick recap on how we got here. And like I said, we're going to go through 2020, 2021, and 2022 data. Very kind of surface level, so I apologize if it's a little too broad, but we do have reports in place, and you can always reach out and ask for more as well. Part of our last 3 years is we've also had some internal changes to standardize our process, and so I'll go over that a little bit more in detail as well. So here's our 2020 table straight out of our water quality objectives report. Every monitoring year, we release this report. Fortunately, we're a little backlogged. So the last report that we have available right now is our 2020 report, and that can be found on our website under monitoring and then under our water quality monitoring. This table, like I said, is straight out of that. And so each paper goes through kind of what we're looking at, goes through each of our parameters and how that reflects on our objectives that we're trying to meet, and then also how it looks at our overall 20 years of data that we have collected. And so the big thing that happened, well, several things, but big thing that happened out of this report is that AWG came up with new internal objectives to reach. These objectives still meet the water boards, but they are based off of our averages and some of our patterns that we've seen that we're trying to narrow down what we're trying to look for and maybe what we're trying to aim for. And so this is based off of one of our old watershed program manager, I believe she was. She now works with the water boards, but Hannah Shembry. She did a quality assurance project plan in 2007. So we're looking at our precision standards and then also what our data over those years look like. And these calculations are outlined in Appendix A of that report. They're also on here, so that picture is Appendix A. I apologize if it's a little blurry. And so history, in June of 2021, we had a restoration and monitoring committee come together and talk about what we wanted our fixed period and normal conditions to look like. We have the objectives from the water board, and we also have our little objectives here. And so our reasoning is all this data does not represent entirely what the objectives we're looking at from 1995. What do we look at now? And so some of the examples on the slide there, as you can see that we looked at taking out the drought year, so 2014, or sorry, we included the drought year, I apologize. We also included high water year. So we're getting both of those different positions on our water history. So now looking at 2021 and 2022, again, we're just looking at our initial data, so I can't give you super strong facts about what we're pulling out of this. Hopefully one day we can, but what we're looking at is just the data. And so I have in the columns, percent that was met in 2021, percent that was met in 2022, and then percent that was met in all the years, so up to 2022. And then just comparing 2021 and 2022, a majority of the areas do seem to match up. But just off the bat, just looking at percentages, there's a couple measurements that differ. And a large focus that kind of we've all been talking about, and of course Alana's presentation is the Tamarack fire and how that influences water quality in our watershed. However, also like Alana mentioned, how we're talking about 1, 2, 3 maybe years out, this might not be the specific event of the Tamarack fire. And that's not because it's not coming through our system, but our program doesn't specifically look at like post-storm events. We sample in March, June, August, and September. And so we don't take those right behind storms. If a storm happens, then we'll get the data, but it's not driven around those. And so programs like Alana's, those are ones that are going to tell us a little bit more about specific events and how those have impacts, while ours is going to tell us overall. And so the kind of the numbers that I pointed out, is we do want to have these questions of what might else be going on in the watershed, that it can explain these water temperature differences, our better pH, why are we seeing lower total dissolved solids? What can we kind of capture from what we're seeing without maybe having a specific event to look at? And so now we're going to look a little bit at each parameter itself. So here's stream temperature from 2020, 2021, and 2022. And then the lower graph is all of the data combined. And overall, you can see there's a repeating trend of warmest water temperatures reported in June and August, and coldest recorded in March. And you can also see how that looks like in a comparison to our objective. So that red line is going to be what we want our max temperature to be, which is at 12.03 degrees Celsius. And then I pointed out a couple things because there's a lot going on. But we have in the bottom graph, the hottest years you can see are 2008, 2013, and 2015. And then an observation from 2022's data is that September was almost just as hot as August, which previously I mentioned June and August are our hottest months. And so having September that high is just something that's out of that trend. And there's a couple of things looking at the data that sampling the highest temperature on there, the very top one, that was taken at noon. So a little later in the day, a little bit warmer. But also if you remember back to September, which I had to look it up weather-wise, but it was one of our heat waves. And so when we sampled, that was at the tail end of that heat wave. And so if we looked at this data and compared it to air temperature, there might be a little bit more of our answers of that was really hot air temperature wise, as well as water temperature time. All right, and now we're going to look at dissolved oxygen. Dissolved oxygen data, again, from 2020, 2021, and 2022 are shown in the upper graphs, and then below we have 2004, 2022. Our objective for DO is that level should be higher than 7.37 milligrams per liter. And that's because most aquatic species depend on certain DO levels to survive. This is the amount of oxygen that's dissolved within the water. And so if you think about specifically like fish species, they are really sensitive, specifically some otolith species are really sensitive to DO levels. And they'll actually start to die if the levels get to 5 to 6 milligrams per liter. And so we want to keep an eye on what these levels are at so that we know how the species are maybe able to survive in there. And then, did I skip one? No. Okay, sorry about that. If you look at, I circled again, our 2022, temperature is going to impact DO levels. And so we had our stream temperature where that September was kind of funky. This is the same spot, the same site where the highest levels of stream temperature. And so typically warmer waters have lower DO levels and cooler waters are going to have higher DO levels. And this kind of then reflects just what we were seeing in the stream temperature. Those high temperatures are lower DO levels, still above our objective. And so when you're looking at these, again, like I was saying, what does this mean for the species present in our watershed and our community goal to maintain and restore these watershed conditions? Is this influencing what species are able to live and thrive in our watersheds? And so next we're going to look at pH. The pH value of water's relative measurement of its hydrogen ion composition. So the concentration of hydrogen ions is essentially what is determining the acidity or pH of water bodies. When there are more hydrogen ions than hydroxide ions, the water will have a pH below 7, indicating that it's acidic. And then vice versa, if it's higher, it's going to be thick. And so the Lahontan Basin Plan states on page 35 that in fresh waters with designated beneficial uses of cold or warm, changes in normal ambient pH levels should not exceed 0.5 pH units. And so then we took that and in order to estimate our normal, we averaged our pH values from all valid records in 2005 to 2020, and then estimated that pH is estimated normal, sorry, pH is 7.81. So then our range is between 7.31 and 8.31. And again, that calculation is in Appendix A if you want to see it in our water quality objectives. The last 2 years, as we can see, 2021 and 2022 have not really even gotten close to that bottom threshold. But we're also seeing that overall the levels are reaching up to the highest level. So again, is that something that we should be looking at? What does that mean? Is this an overall trend or just kind of something we're seeing pop up in the last 2 years? All right, turbidity. So we have our turbidity and our measurement of water clarity. And Alanna did talk about that a little bit with the first flush and how that might connect with our fire. And the only thing, again, that I have to say about turbidity at this point is we don't look at storms per se. And so I think for me personally, it'd be really interesting to kind of put some bigger storms on this time frame and see if any of our sampling events do line up and if those look different from when we're not right after storms. And I didn't, just as a note, the West Fork and the East Fork have different turbidity objectives. And then same for total dissolved solids, we actually have 3 different objectives that we're looking at. The West Fork is divided into 2 sections. In total dissolved solids, they are the concentration of dissolved solids or minerals in a water body. The complication is that AWG, we do not specifically sample TDS, we sample conductivity, and then we use a conversion factor to find TDS. And so our conversion factor is 0.64. So anything we get conductivity-wise, we multiply by 0.64, and that's when our TDS is shown. And this is established from research. And it goes into a little bit more detail in our water objective quality, or water objective report on what we're looking at and why we're doing that. So this slide specifically is showing the West Fork. So we have West Fork, the upper West Fork, and then Painesville is the lower West Fork. Okay, the only the observation I had is at the end of the season, you see a little bit higher of that TDS. And then same thing, here's the East Fork. So the 4 sites that we have on the East Fork, this is what their TDS is looking like. Again, you see the tail end of the year, we have a little bit higher above our objectives. All right, what does this all mean? What are we doing? We have an impressive amount of data collected over 22 years, sorry. And what should we do next? You know, how do we make sure our standards, our data is set up to standards? How do we make sure that we are having these conversations with like Alanna and the water board and how this, you know, ties in? We have a lot of data, we just haven't had a lot of time to do analysis. And so I think next steps would be, what do we want to look at? Not specific events, but how is our water changing over time? What are we looking at, you know, even climate change wise, or bigger storms, like we're seeing, you know, this huge event in January. What is that going to look like? Is it all going to melt off before March, or is it going to be in the summer? And so these are some questions, you know, we have as AWG, and we'd love to hear from our community as well. I'd like to also point out that this program is really unique because we have baseline data. So we're not doing this in response to, say, like the Tamarack fire. We have this data and it's been consistent. And so now if there is something big that might happen, it can be referred to, which is a little bit different than a lot of other restoration projects going on. And so then upcoming in 2023, this is my last slide. 2021 water quality objectives report. Remember I said we're behind on our water quality objectives report. And so big push, we're going to try to get caught up just so it's up to date. So we're hoping to release that in the next couple months. And then our 2022, so last year's data, we're hoping spring, early summer. Our river monitoring season, again, we're going to launch it in March, and we'll have 4 different periods. And we're really hoping to, again, have an in-person training. And so if you're interested, even if you can only come for one, or you just want to, you know, tune into the training, we really love to have people there just to see what we're doing. And so that will be hopefully in May, but stay tuned based off of weather and availability. Okay, I'm gonna stop sharing real quick. Sorry, there's a little longer of a presentation, but if anyone has any questions, I can totally answer them. So.
There's one from Roger in the chat. Does the AWG database allow for trend analysis over time, particularly spastically? spatially analysis?
Yeah, I think that's spatial analysis.
No, I'm sorry, statistical. That was a typo.
Thank you. We do not have that currently set up. We look at averages and we look at kind of visual observations. We don't have any database that looks deeper into it, which is something that we'd like to do. I don't think we currently have the knowledge base to do so, but however, we can branch out and try to figure that out, because we do, like, 20 years of data, there's got to be, something there that we can really look into statistically. Just because now it was brought up, but spatially, I'd also love to see different kind of maps, like Alina was talking about a story map, but just how does our water quality look? Even while I was putting this presentation together, some of the higher temperature, I think, I was noticing that it was a certain site. So what does that look like? Is it all coming from a certain site? Is this, a different time of the year? There's a lot of questions that we can answer, and we have the data. So hopefully next steps, we'd be able to look at that.
The reason I asked the question, Rachel, I'm not trying to put you on the spot, is I work with other watershed groups too, and there's 20 years plus of data collected. This is true for Wolf Creek Community Alliance data in Nevada County also. And I think one of the challenges is, how do you take all this information and present it in a way that you could look at both spatial and numerical trend analysis over time? And how can you put together a story to help the public understand what's really happening? And it's a real challenge that having somebody that has that capability that can exercise a database that way is a real challenge. But I think at some point you have to be able to actually take the information you have and be able to present it in a way that helps the public better understand what's happening.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. Even, I think that was kind of my hope tonight. And then I got into the nitty gritty of putting the presentation together. And, I was like, okay, we're just be walking through observations, and we just don't have so what does this mean, right? And I think that's really important for the public, and even what we stand for as AWG, to get to that point of what does this mean? So yeah, I will reach out, Roger, to talk to you about that, because I do want to figure out some ways that we can take AWG to the next step.
Danny, you have a question?
Just a follow-up. I think that's a great comment. And I think even though that analysis hasn't been done, the fact that AWG's data is all making its way into CEDEN means that, any researcher or someone at a university or anywhere could download all that data and all the rest of the data for those rivers and do some more specific trend analysis or spatial analysis. So we have, the pieces available to do that by collecting the data and then making it publicly available, all the documentation. So, and I am in the middle of doing some of that in a little more detail on the West Fork for the Vision project. So hopefully that'll be interesting to look at. And there's a lot of data being collected. I think that's, one of the things would be good for a future conversation, is how to kind of optimize that too. But it's certainly the AWG data, especially, uploaded and shared, is definitely a valuable piece of that.
Yeah, thank you, Danny. Definitely would rather have the information and just be kind of waiting for some analysis rather than running out and trying to, capture 20 years now. So maybe we need to find a grad student or someone interested in all the analysis. If there's no other questions or comments, I'm going to go ahead. I think we're still on time, maybe a couple minutes behind, but we're going to switch over to thanking our volunteers. And so this next presentation is going to be on what we've done in 2022 and all of our accomplishments thanks to our volunteer work. Let me go ahead and share that. Okay, and again, just holler if things look funky. But again, this is our AWG specific volunteer accomplishments in 2022. This is Hope Valley, and so it's one of our bigger projects over the last 4 years, just size and funding wise. But also just a really, really nice view. Totally covered in snow right now. From the back, this is our summary of all our volunteer work completed in 2022. And we were really fortunate to be able to host in-person events this year, to be able to co-lead additional events with other Alpine groups, and then like the tree planting. And we just were able to really get back out there. And so very exciting to see these numbers. Our volunteer hours, that far right column, they're calculated by taking the number of volunteers and multiplying that by the number of hours in the event. And we use these numbers in reporting for grants and sometimes for match, in addition to reflecting on how much work is volunteer hours. Like Kieffer said previously, we have 2 staff, and a lot of our programs are dependent on volunteer work. So it's huge to see those numbers. And then while our number of volunteers, well, that doesn't necessarily count if the same folks are participating, it's really impressive to say, you know, we had 210 volunteers this year, 2022, or I guess not this year, sorry, in 2022, come out to our events. So we're going to go through kind of each of them a little bit just for some of the highlights. Like I mentioned in the last presentation, we have our river monitors. So 4 events per year. We welcome back 15 returning volunteers and then 6 new volunteers. So super exciting to see. They sampled in rain, smoke, and we walked around road closure. And again, this data goes into CEDEN. So it is accessible for public use. Excuse me. The other 2 big ones that we had were our tree planting events. We are ecstatic to be able to co-host with Alpine Trails Association and U.S. Forest Service. And this is really a big opportunity to bring the community together after the Tamarack fire and plant some trees in the burned landscape. We had volunteers from Tahoe, from Reno, from the Bay Area, and all around come to be able to plant these trees in our area and help heal our landscape. And it was really truly an amazing experience. I can't say that enough. That exemplified the community's desire to be part of healing our landscape. So we had April 9th, we had 47 volunteers, 3 different planting sites, and they planted a total of 2,085 trees. And then our second one, we had 65 volunteers, 3 planting sites, and then 2230 trees planted. And we did have, these trees were donated, but we had different species of ponderosa pine, we had Jeffrey pine, incense cedar, and sugar pine. And looking forward, we thankfully have funding secured to do a monitoring program for the tree survival rates. And this is not only to see what trees survive and what that rate is, but which trees are going to do best. There's a lot of studies out there trying to look at and capture how climate change is going to change the landscape. And so maybe we can see a little bit with the different seedlings that we put in that are not usually found in this area if there are survival rates higher. And then another part of that is, how does this data of what we planted with volunteer help, how does that look like? Is it a successful event to have these volunteers out here and plant these many trees? Our next one that I'm going to go over is our harmful algal bloom monitoring. This one was spearheaded by our previous watershed manager, Lahontan, and it's returned for its 4th year. It's a program in collaboration with the Lahontan Regional Water Quality Control Board. And we, AWG staff and volunteers, collect the samples at Red Lake, and then the water board pays for testing and analysis. And then we get it back to the public on what we're seeing. This is really important for a public health matter. The harmful algal blooms can be really dangerous to animals, children, even adults. And so having an alpine lake reservoir be so high in potentially HABs is something we want to look into and determine what is causing these. Our Markleeville Creek Day is our main volunteer of the event of the year. It was almost threatened due to smoke. I think I waited to maybe the 11th hour to call, but we were still having it. But it really turned out to be an amazing day. We had our volunteers, there's 52 volunteers helping at 8 different sites. And we did trash removal along the West Fork Carson. Volunteers helped American Rivers and GBI build a beaver dam analog. So if any of you have been up to Faith Valley, it's pretty incised banks. And so it's hopeful that these beaver dam analogs or going to help incentivize beaver activity, and then also raise up that floodplain to connect it again. We also had volunteers at Grover Hot Springs State Park, and they removed a lot of invasive weeds. And then 102 willow stakes were put in, again, along eroding banks in Hope Valley. Two of our, I'll say smaller programs were our participation in Adopt a Highway and Death Ride. AWG's Adopt a Highway stretches along Highway 89 from Markville Campground to the cutoff of Monitor Pass. And we have a group of dedicated volunteers that remove trash from that portion of the highway twice this year. So once in May as part of the community beautification put on by Markville Enhancement Club, and then once as part of Creek Day. We also took part in Death Ride again this year, and it's put together by the Chamber of Commerce, and our volunteers helped collect and sort the recycling that comes in from different rest stops as well as the main staging area. All right, and so how do these all kind of fit into AWG and what we're looking at? And it's, you know, almost half of our funding and projects are volunteer driven, which is really, again, an incredible testament to our community and the volunteers. In 2022, we had about 60% of our volunteer work specifically towards Tamarack Fire restoration projects. And you can see in the pie chart that a large portion of our volunteer hours were towards restoration projects. We had another bigger chunk that's mostly our river monitoring for monitoring. And then we had our outreach events as well. And so a lot of the work that we do, the restoration, the monitoring, the outreach, it's due in part to our volunteers. And those hours that we're able to have from our volunteers, they help us maintain collaborations with groups like American Rivers, Forest Service, Regional Board, Alpine County, and so many more. And so Kieffer and I cannot stress more and more, you know, how much we rely on our volunteers and how much we are thankful for them. So here's my last slide of a thank you in our group photos. And, you know, I really hope we can have a bigger celebration kind of in person in the spring and summer, but really show our gratitude. Oh, stop sharing. Okay. So if anyone has any questions on those numbers or any shout outs, again, we are nothing without our volunteers. So thank you. And then if nothing else, sorry, looking at the agenda over here. Just wanted to state again that kind of our next steps at AWG. We obviously have a lot coming up and a lot we didn't talk about, but our big portions for water quality is getting out those water quality objective reports. And so I clean them up, I look at them, Kieffer helps me out, and I send them off to our restoration and monitoring committee. And we do have a couple committee folks here today. So look out in your email for our water quality objective reports. If anyone's interested in being part of a restoration and monitoring committee or volunteering or anything else, please reach out to Kieffer and myself. It's the two of us, and so we're trying to put together as much as we can and get that outreach out to people. But we always welcome expertise and volunteers from outside. We do have our future AWG meetings. We historically have been every 2 months. We are now doing as we have presentations and as needed to not overload people on Zoom, and also to allow and advocate for other meetings that might be happening in Alpine County. But we do want to hear from everyone. So if you have any topics of interest or maybe speakers that you know about, please don't hesitate to reach out to us. And we're here to facilitate these forums and put together information for public outreach. And then Kieffer, if you can't think of any, oh, go ahead, Kieffer.
Roger has his hand raised.
Oh, sorry, Roger.
I just wanted to comment that for those that don't know, California Alpine Club Foundation, we have a lodge at Echo Lake Summit, and part of our mission as an outdoor club is to protect the environment and support maintain the trails and provide for public education in the areas where we recreate in. And one of the things we do, just for those that don't know, is we focus on grassroots environmental organizations that don't have a lot of staff, that don't have a lot of resources or capacity to get normal funding, which is getting harder and harder to find. And we look at organizations like Alpine Watershed Group that are very much volunteer driven and have limited staffs, and we're a couple $1,000s to really help them advance their programs. So we've had, I feel we've had a really successful partnership, and I'm really happy that we can support this group.
Thank you, Roger. We definitely appreciate all your advocacy and the funding. And Roger was one of our HAB volunteers this year, so he got to come out and see our monitoring process, which was a lot of fun. It wasn't raining that time, so that was always nice. Okay, Kimber, am I missing anything on the wrap up or anything else you wanted to say? Okay.
I don't think so.
We do tentatively have our next AWG meeting as Tuesday, March 14th at 5:30 p.m. We're still working on presentations and getting speakers, so stay tuned in our newsletter for what that's going to be. If anyone has any other comments or feedback, speak now or reach out to us. Our emails are part of the email that I sent out earlier, so feel free to reach out at any point.
Thank you all so much for tuning in. I know that some of us are so zoomed out and some of us are just so happy to be able to stay home and not get on the roads and come in via Zoom, but it's just nice to see so many of you at least interested to Zoom in to spend an evening with us. We really appreciate it. And Roger, thank you again to California Alpine Club Foundation. It has definitely bridged some gaps, and I think just the way we scramble to do everything that we try to do and keep all the balls in the air, it's kind of obvious how much the Watershed Group is trying to take on, and we're trying to get to that next point of building capacity to have a third full-time staff member so that we can do more, because there's a lot more to be done. Okay, I think we're going to let you all have the rest of your evening. Enjoy. Thank you again. Thank you, Alanna, so much.
Thank
We
you.
really appreciate the regional board.
I'll try
building
to
a
follow
team.
up with some questions and get back to you.
We can connect. Thank you, everyone. Have a good night.
Thank you.
Have a good night.
Really